Hello and welcome to Sunflower Sutras. I am your host, Tara. To kick things off, we have a poem by Rainier Maria Rilke titled Mating Melancholy. A young knight comes into my mind as from some myth of old. He came, you felt yourself entwined as a great storm would round you wind. He went, a blessing undefined, seemed left as when church bells declined, and left you wrapped in prayer. You fain would cry aloud, but bind your scarf about you, and tear-blind weep softly in its fold. A young knight comes into my mind, full armoured forth to fare. His smile was luminously kind, like glint of ivory enshrined, like a home longing undivined, like Christmas snows where dark ways wind, like sea pearls about turquoise twined, like moonlight silver one combined, with a loved book's rare gold. And with us in the studio today, we have local poet F.C. Appelhanz.
Hi, everybody.
For those of you who aren't familiar with Fred, he is a wonderful musician and poet. He's been at a couple of our open mics, and I've seen him at a couple of other open mics here in Topeka as well. You have a wonderful, diverse collective of topics that you go over.
Yeah.
Everything from kind of classical romantic poems to the more solemn and heartfelt poems about matters such as PTSD, and he's got his poem actually titled PTSD that he just showed me. But yeah, matters like war and just, you've got this kind of classical storyteller element about you that I really liked. And
Well, thank you. I do agree. Romance seems to be my niche. That's what people tell me. And so this last book was a collection of all the romantic type poems I've written over the years. And there were numerous ones, I mean, like 80 or 83. But I didn't want to make it all just glossy and really pretty. So I included the ones that were negative and cheerful that I wrote. So that was my latest book. It's called Loves, Smiles, and Tears, because I didn't want to make somebody think it was all just about the good aspect of love. But as you said, my topics vary a lot by what my past experiences, like PTSD, not personally, but it's what I've observed. And not only for military, but it could be first responders and people like that. Now, I do have a poem called Hero that is directed towards the combat. But my younger brother was in combat, and he just committed slow suicide by drinking himself to death. And because of his combat experiences, and he was my 2 years younger than I, so we kind of grew up together. And so that inspired a lot of poems. And I do focus somewhat on current events. Something I see something on TV or hear something that touches me, and I'll write about that. I wrote about a thing I saw on TV about a bombing that was done, and this man was holding up 2 shoes, baby shoes. And it just triggered this emotion in me about the person who was wearing those at one time, who no longer exists. So I do have a large amount of topics from nature. I'm really a nature lover. I live out in the country, and I don't know if I could live in the city anymore. But if I had to, I would. But my topics, a lot of different things, and which gives me the impetus to write. I mean, if I just concentrated on one topic or one style, then it would wear out real quick. And so I've lately, over the last year, I think, I started experimenting for something other than just your normal 4 lines to a verse. I'll make one that's 5 lines or one that's 6 lines, just for difference. And that keeps my writing fresh. But as you referred, I also play 4 instruments. That's a lot of time also, because you got to practice those things, especially as you get older. And I get out once in a while and play in public when I get the opportunity. And I guess if I want to start from the very beginning, I grew up in Topeka. My grandparents, on my mother's side, lived out by Burnett's Mound. And my mom was the oldest of 13 children. And so we lived with our grandparents for a little while Dad was going to KU. And so I got to roam the hills of Burnett's Mound. And I had aunts, they were 6 months older than I. So my grandparents, when they got done raising all these children, went on this really long vacation. Grandpa being a carpenter, they bought a 3/4-ton pickup and bought one of those slide-in 10-foot campers. He gutted it and rebuilt it to grandma's specs. And they took off. And they went down Texas and then through the Arizona and New Mexico and then California and up the coast to Washington and Oregon and headed back to Montana and got killed by a head-on collision on their first big trip of their lives. And that was the trauma. I mean, I've never cried so hard in my life. Out of the trauma that sparked my writing. And the first poem was about them. And it's been ongoing for about 40 years since then. And I'm the oldest of 9 children. And so also write about, growing up. And I have just so many different things I can channel and tap into, as I said, because of the emotional side and then the beauty of nature. And I do travel, and I have a daughter that lives in Portland, Oregon now, so I go out there every year. I just was sitting in the Black Hills a couple years ago, and I was sitting in our campsite, and I happened to look up into the pine trees, and the wind was blowing them, and they were just swaying like a dance. And so I started writing that right then.
Yeah, that image is so beautiful.
Yeah, about swaying trees. Luckily, I have accepted, and this is something that a lot of people don't do, I accept the fact that I'm a poet and a musician, and so I realize when I need to write. I don't write every day. Some people think, you don't write every day, but I don't because I've got other things going on. I'm also a hospice volunteer and AA group treasurer, and I just like to experience life. It's through my hospice experience that I realized how important it is, because I've got more history than I have future. Being a hospice volunteer really expanded that and just put it in my face. You've got some living to do before it's too late. Of course, I always take my experiences in traveling and put them on paper. And whether it be a poem about dealing with semis and feeling like a rabbit because I'm driving this little car amongst all these semis and passing and so forth. But it's interesting to be able to tap into that and be creative in different ways and keep it fresh and interesting.
On that note, you mentioned spending time as a hospice volunteer. A thing I've noticed a lot about your work, you are an incredibly empathetic individual. You have a lot of persona poems as well. I don't quite think I've seen another poet locally that has so many persona poems, actually. Diverse topics, everything from perceiving trauma and processing stress from the perspective of a cutter.
Oh, you did that poem called Cutter?
Yes.
Yes, that was powerful, I thought.
And you've got other poems too where you really tap into the perspective of other people, and I just think that's really lovely.
Part of that might be because I'm a recovering person, and so I can identify to a certain degree with people. I saw on TV that an episode about young women who cut themselves, and I was just blown away. I just couldn't get it out of my mind. I mentioned that I don't write every day, but a lot of times I find myself not being able to go to sleep until I write. I'm tossing and turning in bed, and I thought, all right, I think I've experienced this before, so I get up and start writing. Even if it's just 2 lines or 1 line, that's the start of a poem that I can tap into later on, but at least I can go to sleep afterwards. So that's how some of those come about also.
You've got quite an assembly of books, actually. You've got 5 books that, if I remember correctly, it's 5 right now?
Actually, there's 7.
7. I've got my hands on 5 right now.
Yes.
And those have all come out quite recently in the last few years. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's because initially when I would get it up, I usually figured 70 poems as a book, and I would get that together and take it to a printer here in town and have it printed up. So when a good friend introduced me to Create Space, which was a publisher on Amazon, then I discovered that I could use photographs for covers. Before, I was just kind of a graphic, and so these photographs that I've used on my covers are really pictures that I've taken. And I put them with a good title. Like I had a wonderful photo of a sunset, and I used it for a book called Mind Dancing, and then another one called Midnight Musings. It was a painting by my aunt. So when they redid that, so they were redos, then they changed back the copyright. And so initially it might have been, 2010, but when I redid it, it would come back 2015.
Oh, okay. I was curious about that. Yeah. Just like, gosh, you've been really busy.
Well, I have done, my first book was in 98, so it's been seven books in 21 years, which is a lot. I like that idea that I can be that creative because it gives me some self-validation. Yeah. Like I'm a good person and I have ability to do this, and some people can connect with it. That's if I could ever write a poem and it impacts someone's day in a positive way, that's all I can ask for. And if I can get a book, then there's that much more of a chance that someone is going to be able to be impacted by one of the poems in that book. If I can just get them to pick up the book. But that's maybe what the covers are nice, they attract people because, I have one that's called Valley View Farm, which is where I live, and it looks out over a valley. And so I took a picture of that and put it on the cover. I'm really excited about the covers that I've been able to use in the last 5 to 7 years because of that new avenue through CreateSpace, which is now changed, though. It's no longer called CreateSpace. It's called Kindle Direct. Oh. So I don't want to make people think that they can go to CreateSpace, they won't be able to find it. Yeah. So it's Kindle Direct now through Amazon. The
covers of your books, by the way, just for our audience to know, they're gorgeous. I really love, obviously being a Kansan, I really love a good photograph of a beautiful Kansas sunset. Mm-hmm. So I was obviously very smitten with that one, but it's really great photography. You're a Renaissance man.
Well, and the nice thing about that is it makes my life more complicated to have all these different avenues of pursuing. But the last book was called Love, Smile, and Tears. It has my daughter's sketch on the front of it and a picture of her watercolor on the back. But before that was my Midnight Musings. I used, as I said, my aunt's painting. She sells online professionally on the front because it was a midnight scene. And then on the back, I had a picture that my grandma painted on a piece of wood of zinnias, and I always remember growing up the zinnias being on her front porch, around her front porch. And so I put that on the back. Oh. And I had a sketch of my daughter on the inside. So it was kind of a family-oriented book, that one was. But yes, I agree. I've been very fortunate to be able to capture a few nice pictures on film. I have a CD also, which I took a picture of outside most of these are out my back door. The sunset, the Valley View Farm, the picture for the CD. I was on my way to a band practice for this sunset, which it had been kind of storming, and so the sunset was coming through those clouds, and it was just a moment I said, "Oh, I got to get the camera before I leave." And so, and luckily, being retired, I do have opportunity to seize more moments, and that's another part of my idea of life's short. What life I have left. Yeah. And so I do try to do that, seize the moments as they come around, but it's easier said than done to be in a moment. And because, there's just so many outside influences on our lives to interrupt that moment. Yes. Yeah.
Earlier you mentioned that there's 4 instruments you play. I know that you play acoustic guitar. What are the other 3? I'm curious.
Okay, there's the 6-string and the 12-string guitar. And I play what's called a hammered dulcimer. There are 2 types of dulcimers, hammered and mountain dulcimer. Mine is the larger one, and you have 2 sticks that are called hammers, and you hit the strings with it. Oh. It's really a unique instrument. And also, it's fun to play. Yeah, it's fun to play, and people are really attracted to it. But anyway, years ago, I had an opportunity a lady give me the Russian folk instrument. It's called the balalaika. And it's a little about 2 feet long, it has a triangular body with a round back, and it just has 3 strings on it, two of them nylon and 1 steel. So it's kind of unique also. And I thought, if people are always coming up and wondering, saying, what is this dulcimer thing? And so I thought, well, if I get this balalaika out also, I really have an opportunity to expose people to new instruments and what they sound like. And I don't know a lot on the balalaika yet, but that's one of my goals. And so those are the 4 I play.
I need to look up this instrument because it sounds very interesting.
It is. It's really interesting. like I said, it's a little triangular body, but it has a sound hole. You know, on guitar you have a sound hole where the strings go over. This one is the same one, but it's only about the size of a quarter. And it's amazing the sound that comes out of that little instrument. Of course, when that, you know, the lady gave me that instrument, she also gave me a instructional book, because I'd never seen that instrument before. Of course, it was in Russian.
Oh.
So it didn't do me a whole lot of good. But you can go online and get Mel Bay has a lot of instructional books for a lot of different instruments, and I got one balalaika, so I got a lot of them.
On the note of music, one of our recent open mics that we had, you performed a song of yours, and you said a little bit ago about your CD. How much songs do you compose?
I haven't composed any recently. I'm talking 10, 15 years. I've composed about 8 or 10. And on the CD, there's probably 8, maybe. It's mostly dulcimer music and then my own ballads. And so it's kind of a blend in that respect. It's just been hectic in the sense that I've been doing these books, and I've been doing numerous books about I did 3 of them in the last year. One of them was original. It's called Embrace the Adventure. And the photo on it was when I took hiking in Arkansas. And then the Midnight Musing was a redo of the 3rd book, and then the Loves poems was a compilation of all the romantic ones I've done. So the last year was very hectic as far as writing and getting books together. The CD, I think, was done in 2014, no, in 2004, and I haven't done one since. I had someone, I was playing up on the square at Polton where I live around, and a lady who had my CD, she came up and said, well, have you done anything more recent? So evidently she was interested in me wanting to do some more, but I don't really see it happening. Time-wise, I don't want to take the time going into the studio and recording all that stuff, but we'll see. And I don't use the word never.
Yeah.
I don't use it, so it's going along and keep me plenty busy.
Yeah.
I really enjoy being retired. I hope everyone gets there sooner or later. I've been very happy and blessed to live where I do. I live on 30 acres and overlooks a valley and get beautiful sunsets. It's an old house was built in 1901, so it's 118 years old.
Oh, wow.
But it's just a plain house. It's not, some country farmhouses are really special and have, a lot of nooks and crannies and special woodwork and all that. Mine isn't. Mine was just a farmhouse, and it shows it by the decor. That's fine. It's just I'm a simple type of person. I like to keep it simple, and so I just maintain it.
The peace and kind of tranquility of living out in a place like that out in the country, do you think that really helps you as a creative person to, have a nice, safe space that helps you concentrate on your work?
Oh, definitely. I have a table. I use wood for heat also. And so I bet 80-85% of my poems have been written on that same spot at the table. And, I've gone through those legal pads. I write them on a legal pad, and then I was introduced to a computer, so I went from there. But I'm still a pretty novice when it comes to computer or technology. I don't even own a smartphone. But a lot of times when I'm laying in bed, and it's wintertime, and I have all the windows closed, and my refrigerator is just outside my bedroom door, so when it's not running, I just marvel how quiet it is. It's just so quiet, and I just love it, and I never tire of it. I think part of that might have been from having worked in a tire factory. I worked a good year before I retired, and it was a lot of noise, so that might be why I really appreciate the quiet, and also growing up, the oldest of 9 kids, it's a lot of quiet also.
It's nice to eventually in your life get to a point where it can just be you and peace.
I agree. I live by myself, and it doesn't seem to bother me. I marvel at nature. I mean, I see all this wildlife come through my yard, and I'm just enthralled by it. And I consider myself so lucky to live where I do. I've been there 40 years, which is most of my life. I'm 71 now. So most of my life has been spent living in that same spot. And I've planted a lot of trees. I've started an orchard. And so I have a hickory tree outside the house a little bit, and I put a bench swing in it. I can't imagine the total number of hours that I spend sitting in that bench swing, just looking out to the east over the have a small pond. So the pond and then the orchard on the other side of it, and all the trees that I've planted over the years. It's just a special spot.
It sounds like a very calm and gentle life, and as a city person, it sounds also very alien to me, but I definitely see the draw into it.
Yeah. I do have a neighbor who built a house across the road from me, and I just accept that because I had a good run. It's been 20 years and nobody's been across the road from me. They're nice. I've only met them once. They have some cattle and some horses. I hope my granddaughter doesn't find out they have horses, but I don't know what I'll do. We'll see. That's another thing. As I've gotten older, to realize, you just have to accept what is presented to you at, again, that moment. And when you can get to the point where you can recognize those moments, those that are very special, that I think is part of the ongoing learning process of being a hospice volunteer, is the moments that you spend with people that you see what they're going through, and you realize that you need to just accept life for what it is, and at that moment. So it sounds like a very hectic life, and sometimes it is hectic, but I'll take my time and sometimes I just stop. I just sit in my swing.
On the note of embracing the moments and just living life to the fullest, what do you see in the future? Do you see more books?
Well, I do have 23 poems that I've written since the last book. And like I said, I considered 70 a book, so there's almost a third of another book. So I figured another maybe 3, at the most 4 years for another book. But I'll be getting close. I've written like 440 poems. And so that would be getting me close to 500. I reached a milestone of 400 and went past that. So I thought, well, what do I do now?
Yeah.
I guess I shoot for 500. But if I did enough for another book, it would be close to 500, which amazes me that I did that.
Yes.
I've never taken a creative writing course. I didn't do any of that in school. And so it just amazes me that all this creativity has flowed out of me. I think I've become a better speller. And the thesaurus is really interesting. If I'm writing something and I get tired of using the same book or same word, I will get that thesaurus out and get using words. I wrote a poem recently about words, and I thought that would be interesting to write about words. But I didn't want to put the title at words. So I got a thesaurus out and I come over with one called idioms, which is another word for words. And so I titled it that. So I didn't use a thesaurus for a number of years. I didn't know what it was. So someone introduced me to it, and I rely on it. And the dictionary.
Well, we're now at the point where if you would like to share your own work, we would love to hear it.
Sure. I have a few here. The first one is one of those romance ones that I seem to gravitate to, and it's called Forever Entwined. When the highest of mountains are riddled to mere clumps of small homes for tiny creatures, our love will remain. When the oceans of the world dwindle to small puddles, oases for tiny blades of grass, our love will remain. When the sound of many voices shrinks to a single syllable, to wither and disappear, our love will remain. For our love knows no limits of earthly time or space. Amongst the enlightened spirits, our love will remain. Imprinted by hope, enveloped by goodness, our spirits forever will be entwined. This is another one, PTSD. Like I said, this could be combat or first response in Iraq, domestic disputes. PTSD can affect a lot of people in different ways. So it's called PTSD. I scream into the darkness when flashes explode in white, yellow, and red. Within a mist of experiences, apparitions dance hauntingly. I reach for something soothing to end this recurring nightmare. But relief remains only temporary. My dreams return with debilitating dominance. I pray for drugs and alcohol will suffice, but the demons conquer all means of solace and hope for a peaceful sleep. And I protect unsuspecting loved ones with absolute secrecy. My time here is short compared to eternity. I will live on only in their memories. And this is called My Spirit. I would think this is more about what I would like to think people think of me after I died. So this is my legacy. I put it as a footprint or template for people to use. I don't know anyway. But it's called My Spirit. When I no longer walk among songs and fragrances, my spirit emancipated, smile for me. For I no longer struggle with contradiction or insanity. I will be a thought causing you to awaken, a moment of inspiration causing you to express, a swelling of emotion causing you to love. I will be the luminescence of a full moon night. I'll be the mystery and wonder dancing in nature's beauty, the enchanting tranquility experienced in music. I will be with you as your inner voice, whisper my admiration, whispering my love.
Thank you, Fred. Those are really lovely. And this is what I was talking about earlier about the gentleness of your poems. That's what I look forward to every time I see you at our open mic or our other open mic that is here in town with Speakeasy. Mm-hmm. It's always that kind of, I hesitate to use the phrase like thought-provoking because it's kind of overused, but it's just kind of one of those meditating on life kind of things.
Well, it's what I refer to about touching somebody. That happens and great. If not, maybe next time.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Well, thanks for the invitation. I enjoyed it. It's a new experience.
And now for our listener submission from Miriam Sagan. Miriam Sagan is the author of 30 published books, including the novel Black Rainbow and Geographic, a memoir of time and space, which won the 2016 Arizona, New Mexico Book Award in Poetry. She founded and headed the creative writing program at Santa Fe Community College until her retirement in 2016. Her blog, Miriam's Well, has 1,500 daily readers. She has been a writer in residence in 4 national parks at Yaddo, MacDowell, Colorado Art Ranch, Andrews Experimental Forest, Center for Land Use Interpretation, Iceland's Bulkistan Residency for Creative People, and another dozen or so remote and unique places. She has recently returned from Kura Studio, Hiroshima, Japan, where she was working on text installations as a part of the creative team Maternal Mitochondria. Her awards include Santa Fe Mayor's Award for Excellence in the Arts, the Poetry Gratitude Award from New Mexico Literary Arts, and a Lannan Foundation residency in Marfa. Red Cloud. Part 1. Lace curtains, Venus at dusk, Nebraska, an old story, wind ruffles the pages of a book, no longer salvage, an expensive quilt, prairie, wind, train whistled, loneliness, made more lonely by a lonely tale. Part 2. Blue horses come over the ridge of the mind, warriors painted on hide. Songlines tell us about water, no water. Even a small girl in her nightgown might fly barefoot over the town's steeples and train tracks. Everything in its essence yearns to go elsewhere. Prairie like a bride. Clouds, dunes of ash, sand, grit, drifted with an ageless wind from ancient volcanoes, fossil soil. In drought, its flesh that comes to water departs as bone 20 million years old. Badlands that eroded out of the past that we were trying to read like a WPA mural on a county building, or a winter count painted on hide that begins with the creation of the world. Skeleton of a teepee, sunflowers gone to seed, a field of supernovas, yellow butterfly among September's dry, clanking stalks. Cushion, gray velveteen, stuck with pins, wild cucumber, twining the bridge, weed called needle and thread, stinging nettles. A ribbon marked the pace where I stopped reading, interrupted by a child wanting a glass of water. Blank pages of this book, ruffled by breeze, hair in my mouth as if everything were speaking to me at once. A woman's life is wind, wind, wind. The mind of God is moving again, and I with it. A blue window seen from mine in the old hotel. Slick streets beneath the stuttering street lamp. It's been many years since I looked out at rooms above mine. That particular feeling, a hot springs town in rain. You gave me a gift hidden within the ordinary. A cafe life, small waterfall, Lakota star quilt. Hiding in plain sight, a flicker of the ineffable, taste or scent of spring and autumn, curtain pulled back, light spilling out. After Marie Sandoz, 1869 to 1966. Her father beats her. She becomes a rider along the upper Niobrara. Crazy Woman Creek, a place called Hanging Woman, the coming of barbed wire, the walking plow, a curl of smoke, coffee boiling at sundown. Everything in the universe is round, sun, moon, time, except for stone. Try this in the first person. Thank you very much, Miriam, for your submission, and thank you, listeners, for joining us for another episode of Sunflower Sutras. If you or someone you know would like to submit to our show, feel free to submit any works to us at tara.bartley@yahoo.com. So long before, and farewell.